This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 10:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and you're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chaym, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. Yes, and it is a beautiful Florida Friday morning.
Albeit a bit on the warm side.
A little bit on the warm and the moist side. So, you as a former Arizonan, along with me.
Totally different.
Totally different, right? And so the way that I try to explain it to people is that in Florida, it's 95 and feels like 117. And in Tucson, it's 105 and feels like 90. Yeah.
Oh, well, I remember my first weekend, if you will, in Tucson. And keep in mind, I had moved from Santa Barbara.
Okay, so you were...
I was a Cal Coast kid, and it was like, oh my gosh, where am I? And
the frying pan.
But that was in February.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it snowed a few days later.
Right.
It was like, come on.
It does. It snows in Tucson.
Yes, it does.
But, of course, it doesn't last.
No.
It's gone in a day or two, except for at Mount Lemon.
Does it? Yeah.
Mount Lemon, where you need chains to go up.
Yep. Yeah, and our engineers at KVOA were trapped up there. It was huge snowfall up there, and they had to be helicoptered out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness.
Helicopters have really changed a lot of helping people.
Yes.
In things.
Oh, yeah.
I think of and I can't remember his name right now, the rescuer who died in Sabino Canyon because his rope broke just as he rescued some people and got them out of the canyon. His rope broke, and he was hanging there on the cliff as long as he could. They actually brought his wife to say goodbye, that they couldn't get to him. And if they'd had a helicopter with a good rescue, that would have been a different story.
A piece of cake then, yeah.
So, yeah. Let me bring my caffeine over here.
Yeah, I remember doing, this would have been in Los Angeles, doing with San Gabriel search and rescue team. And those people are amazing.
They are. The things they do. And the things that firefighters do.
Yes.
I mean, a shout out to firefighters and other first responders who I guess people don't realize how important they are, how many more people would die if we didn't have them.
Well, the bird that I went up in, it almost had an operating room in there.
Yeah.
They if push comes
do
to
a lot.
shove,
Yeah.
they can do minor surgery up there.
Yeah.
It's
not so minor. I mean, tamponades and things like that. So
right.
Huge things that are life-saving.
Yeah.
They're not going to just cut somebody open to say, oh, let's remove your mole.
Yeah. Well, and you just think about that. That was, you figure, 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Think of all the lives that have been saved by those people.
Yeah. Think of all the good work that's being done in life, people helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and my listeners know that I'm working on getting Florida licensing for being a mental health therapist, and that's another field where people just help others have happier, more productive lives, and probably also save some lives.
I just think, looking back on all this COVID craziness, it really has caused a lot of damage.
Oh, COVID? Absolutely. Some of the things that COVID did was that it locked people down, sometimes with their abusers, with no escape.
Ooh.
Right. So if you had an abusive household,
Yeah.
then there was no escape from it. Right. During a normal day, if there's an abuser in the household, the victims have some reprieve while people are coming and going during the day. And they have a chance to build some connections with people who aren't in that situation. But yeah, so domestic abuse and stuff like that just skyrocketed. Not to mention the tensions of people losing jobs and money issues and
Oh, sure.
all of those things that absolutely play in. It wreaked havoc. So not only was there the, oh my gosh, am I going to get COVID? And all of that. There's also this, how and where do I go? It created a situation in lives where breadwinners changed. Thank God for the stimulus checks, because I think they really did help people weather some of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they went far enough. On the other hand, how do you meter that? How do you send that out in a way that's going to get to those who need it the most? And that's a difficult question. And, of course, the corporate money, that some of which got used well, and we won't go to the other places.
Some that didn't.
Right. And, it's an interesting, crazy world, but COVID definitely wreaked havoc. And I think back as much as we had, thank God, things like Zoom and FaceTime and Skype and all of those other ways of connecting. Can you imagine what it must have been like in 1918 to 1920
Mm-hmm.
with the Spanish flu? And if you look at any of the old pictures, you'll see that they had people wearing masks all over the place and people objecting to masks because they weren't used to it. That's really what it is the people who have difficulty accepting something different. Those are the folks who object to it. It's an act of common courtesy to protect everyone else from your stuff. When I talk about it with students, as I point out, surgeons and nurses and other operating room personnel don't wear a mask to prevent them from getting a disease from the person on the table. It's to protect the person on the table. And that's why they have a sterile field. If we could create a sterile field around all of us, then diseases wouldn't transmit. But they do. They do transmit. And there are still cases of COVID cropping up. Not as many, not typically as lethal. Thank God for the vaccine. And you were talking about a birthday coming up, and I'm sure that you remember many of a vaccine discussion over the years of people totally not understanding how and what vaccines are.
Yeah.
And just general pattern paranoia, for lack of anything better. The world is not scheming to get everybody. It's just not. Are there schemes in the world? Yeah. There are plots, and there are long-term ones, and we see them in action. And the challenge, of course, is how and what do you do with that? As if you are caught in something, or as I like to tell people, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean somebody's not out to get you. That's true. But there's a point at which it's reasonable and a point at which it's not. So don't let it destroy your life, one way or the other. And I've been the victim of character assassination, and it doesn't feel good. But here's the piece. You do survive it. You do survive it. And the trick is to live long enough and well enough that it comes back in their face. And that's just something I would pass on to others. It is not fatal. You will survive. It does take work. And nobody ever promised you that everything would be handed to you in life.
Yeah.
As that old song goes, right? Never promised you a rose garden.
And my life came up thorns.
And everybody's does. And
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get it.
you know, it's so I'm going to give a shout out to Orna, and I'm forgetting her second name, the woman who does couples therapy. And there's a great line she's doing a mini documentary on treating couples. She's a licensed therapist in New York, and I happened to trip across one of her episodes, and I got hooked. It was not hard. She's an excellent therapist. And one of the lines that she says is that when she's done working, she does like a 12 session with the couples. They sign up for 12 sessions, which is not paid for by insurance, by the way, folks. So that's hugely expensive. I think her going rate is like $700 a session.
Now, wait a minute. Wouldn't you think that would be naturally picked up by insurance?
Couples, not so much. Individual therapy, yes. It depends on your insurance, but it's often not covered by insurance. Because, it's not necessarily an illness, although people do bring their own illnesses into it. Clearly.
Yeah.
And the other point that she makes is that problems in a relationship are a spiral. They keep coming back. And the hope is that as you circle back around to a problem, that you now are more skilled, more knowledgeable, and have better tools with which to resolve it. And so the fights are not as heated. They're not... You're never going to live with somebody long term and agree about everything. It's just not going to happen.
When you get into couples therapy, and I've been fortunate enough never to have gone through it, but are the guys more difficult than the women?
No. It depends on who and what. Part of the problem in family or in couples therapy is that you're dealing with both the trauma and the wounds that each person carries into the relationship or into the family system, and how that plays out and manifests. So you've got secondary and tertiary reactions going on that still have to be dealt with at all of the different levels. And the therapist doesn't fix somebody. That's not what we do. What we do is we help that person find their own answers. Because the answers to people's problems, unless there's a chemical or medical underlying condition, which you work with a medical... I'm not going into psychiatry, I'm going into mental health and into psychology, which... and obviously I've got the doctorate in psychology already. The point is... there are things that each of us can do to be healthier, to be happier, to be more productive. Some of us have been more traumatized. Some of us have healed from some of our traumas. I actually had some of the same kind of training when I was a chaplain in the hospital in Akron, when I was at Akron General. The training to be a chaplain is much like the training, not surprisingly, to be a mental health.
Yeah, no, I would not be surprised at all. And that's where I take my hats off to the folks at hospice. I mean, they're so gentle and caring.
Yeah, usually
in a very difficult situation.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've worked through much of their stuff. The stuff that you hold on to, and this comes out of Jewish teaching as well. The stuff that you hold on to instead of working through and dealing with comes out in ugly ways. So when you say something like, well, I'm a strong, was always scared me as a rabbi, as a chaplain, and as a therapist. When somebody says, oh, I'm doing really well, I haven't cried. I'm sorry, crying is a really good, healthy human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It is an important release of not only tears and emotion, but toxins from our bodies. When we cry in anguish, we release toxins from our bodies that are not released in any other way. And so, somebody who never cries carries those toxins for life.
They're obviously not Italian because we cry at everything.
Well, we have this horrible thing that hopefully parents are not doing as much of, which, boys don't cry.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or men
I heard
don't
that.
cry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No. They're human beings, folks, and they do cry.
Yeah, and it's natural.
Yeah, and it's the worst thing. I don't like seeing somebody cry, don't get me wrong, but I also recognize that in those tears, there's a healthy release. And, yeah, people get emotional. It's not a failing. Not a failing.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's at weddings or sad occasions, tears are very, very helpful. And if you push that down and suppress it, it's going to pop out somewhere in a weird way, because we can't. Our psyches are not such that we can push something down and keep it. It becomes a pressure cooker, and we don't want it.
Then it just festers.
Yeah, we don't want it to either pop out somewhere ugly or to blow up, which is even worse. It is much healthier to, when you deal with something, deal with it now. Recognize what hurts, why it hurts, and process it. Help yourself reframe. It is one of the things that I do teach my students, that we all get tapes and recordings from our parents, from other adults in our lives, and peers. Peers give us all kinds of junk as we're growing up. And some of those we take in, and they're not constructive. They're not helpful. And the job of growing up, the job of living, is to go through those things and discard what isn't helpful. Just as you clean out your room and your drawers and your closets from time to time, you need to clean out your internal closet from time to time and get rid of the stuff that doesn't help you be present, be connected to people, and deal with life. And I get it that if somebody lies to us and it breaks trust, that it's hard to rebuild that. I get that. I'm not saying that you should accept everybody at face value, but you need to accept some people at face value. You need to have somebody with whom you can talk about things, with whom you can process. Another one of the wonderful vignettes out of that couples therapy was, she commented that when two people are in a relationship and one of them has an anxiety or a stressor, what they do is they hand it to their partner, to the other person, mm-hmm. and the other person looks at it and processes a little bit of it and then hands it back. And it goes back and forth until the multiple processing brings that anxiety down to a place where it no longer can stand on its own.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the work of couples, is to share that. So if you're in a relationship where the couple says, don't tell me stuff I don't want to hear, wow, you're depriving your partner of that process and yourself of that process. That is how we make life better. That's part of the reason for having social relationships, is so that you don't have to bear the burdens alone. And this is as good a time as any to say, if you'd like to call and ask a question about this or anything else that might cross a rabbi's eyes, please give a call at 772-340-1590. And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb. We're talking about the importance of being in a social relationship and how you help each other to deal with the hurts and the anxieties and the negative parts of life. No life is 100% positive.
Do you have students now, either at Kaiser or IRSC, that want to get into the health field or psychology?
Yeah. At IRSC, I have all different kinds of students because it's an introductory humanities, and everybody's got to have 6 credits of humanities. So I know that they either pick it because it fits their schedule, or it sounds like the least onerous of all of the electives. I have no illusions. A couple of them are in there because they took me for 3 other credits in humanities, because I do tend to have repeat students, and some of them have family members or friends who say, yeah, go ahead and take a class with her. I do a couple of things that I work hard to reduce stress for the students in the class, Because it is a stressful time. College is stressful. And I'm not there to be the gatekeeper. I'm there to help them succeed. And certainly at Kaiser, where I teach psychology, so by default, right, those who are taking psychology are probably there because they want to go into
Yes.
a helping field. But I also get a lot of the early nursing students that come through some of the psych classes, and I teach forensic psychology. So I'm working with people who will be future crime scene investigators, police officers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I actually just finished teaching that one term, I guess 2 terms ago, a little while back, was forensic, and that was a lot of fun. It's
Now, what did your students want to become then?
one of them is going to go ahead and get a master's in criminology, and the other one will, and that one actually graduated and went on to a master's program, and with Kaiser. The other student, there were 2 students in that class, and the other one has, I think, 1 or 2 more classes, and she will graduate. And she probably will become a crime scene investigator, was my guess.
Oh,
that's
cool.
that's her passion. So I'm sure she's going to be looking for those connections.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And
Wow.
so we did. We looked at, some folks may or may not remember, the Ken and Barbie serial killers up in Canada.
No?
That's a very famous couple that killed a number of women.
Oh,
And
gosh.
he's in prison for life, and she's not. It's an interesting story. Plea bargain with the devil, say some people. It's, yeah, definitely
Wait a
some.
minute, she didn't get any prison
She did
time?
get some,
A
not
little.
much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But her plea bargain got it way down. And so she's out and about. And I'm sure she's on some people's radar, because I can't picture you ever lose that supervision, shall we say. Although she has children, she remarried.
Oh gosh.
And
Oh,
I mean,
no.
it's all you can Google it, folks. Yeah, interesting. There's interesting people, and obviously serial killers have something very wrong in their dynamic.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. So the question becomes, how do you break those chains? How do you stop that? And we don't understand all of the heritability of some of these divergent personalities. And how do you help them be contributing and powerful in the right way? How do you help them move to there?
Or can you help them?
Well, there are some people that probably are just. There's an interesting video that talks about the German prisons, and I'm thinking in particular, there's one that 60 Minutes did,
Mm-hmm.
where they went with some public defenders, and they actually went with a convicted murderer, and a whole big group went to Germany to study German prisons. Germany incarcerates a small fraction of what we do in the U.S. Their prisons are very small. They don't have the death penalty. We are one of the very few countries that has the death penalty, and the others on this list with us are Iran, Iraq, China. Yeah. All those lists you don't want to be on. Saudi Arabia, yeah. Those wonderful countries that are responsible for the top 5 countries, and we're one of them that has capital punishment, is responsible for 82% of the executions in the world. 35 states currently allow capital punishment, which means 15 don't, and that's notable. Florida, of course, does have capital punishment, does execute, not as many as Texas, but you know.
Up in Stark, Florida. Yep.
Yeah. And it's a horribly expensive. People think that, that saves money compared to having somebody in prison for life, and the answer is no. It's 10 times more expensive. We have 10 times more prisoners than any other country on the planet. We exceed the list of warehoused inmates, and I'm going to use that phrase, warehoused inmates, than any other country on the planet.
And are we the only country that has private prisons?
I don't know enough about that.
That's a weird thing.
That's
to
a
me.
weird dynamic for
Yes.
people to profit from warehousing inmates, of which we know that at least 4% are innocent. 4% of death row is innocent, is the current estimate. Which, granted, means 96% are, in fact, culpable of the crime for which they were convicted, but some are not.
You know, I remember doing this television series, sweep series, on the California's most dangerous prisons. And I remembered looking into the eyes of Charles Manson. Now, I was a safe distance away. There are obviously bars there.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so scary.
Yeah,
And,
well,
you know, it's just
and
one of those things.
and there has been no effort to humanize him.
Oh,
There
I'm
was
sure
no
not.
effort. So I'm going to go back to Germany, and if you look up that 60 Minutes German prison documentary that they did,
Well worth the time, by the way.
well worth the time, and it's high time that we modified our prisons. The ratio of prisoners to guards and the number of prisoners in a facility in America is just incredible. They have hundreds, we have tens of thousands.
I was fascinated to see that they leave their doors open at
Yeah.
night. It's like, okay.
Well, that's one huge difference
Yeah.
that inmates in Germany, and there are some that they don't release because they view them as too dangerous. So there are a few that are de facto life because they just haven't achieved the criteria for being released. And they do have something, though, called furloughs, which is that if you're serving a sentence and you're doing your therapy, imagine that, they have to go through therapy, and you're doing your vocational education and you're doing all the right things, you can earn a weekend or even a week away from prison that you can spend with your family. And the Americans asked the German officials, well, don't you have a problem with people committing a crime or disappearing while they're on furlough? And they said 0.3%.
Whoa.
0.3%. So the benefit to the thousands of people that are affected far outweighs the couple that misbehave. And they catch them. They catch them. So you don't have anywhere near as much. And their crime rate and our crime rate are parallel. It's interesting to note that's one of the things that Rosen in his talk on the German prisons brings out, which is that crime rates rise and fall throughout the world in harmony because a lot of crime is caused by other things. Like, for example, muggings are way, way down. It's not because we're doing a good job at arresting muggers. It's because people are not carrying cash in their pockets, and it's just not as profitable to mug somebody.
Right.
So that crime has gone down. Other crimes have gone up. Cybercrime, identity theft, those things have gone up because they have become profitable for criminals. Criminals also do what's profitable. And
They
when
do their own research.
They do their own research. And so crimes of many types went down during the lockdown and COVID for the same reasons that everything else went down during COVID. There's larger external societal and global forces that affect the rise and fall of the crime rate. So our incarceration rate, which is phenomenally high, historically high, 10 times what we used to do, it has skyrocketed since the 1970s, and it has no effect on the overall crime rate. But it sure puts some coins in some pockets with being privatized. Follow the money, folks. I've said it many, many times. You'll see who profits from it, and they've got a reason for keeping the system going, for encouraging it, for making it harder, for making the crimes for which you end up in prison much. There are many crimes that are just not significant that have people in prison. Not to mention the few really bad cops that are out there and arrest people because they want to. And I'm not saying that that's common, but it's enough that the police departments need to monitor it.
Yeah, thank goodness that they are few and far between.
Agreed. There's some real big systemic overhauls that we need to take away some of those incentives and some other things along those lines. But that takes somebody looking at it, and it takes the system being willing to be looked at. Those are two big challenges. So, yeah. We've got lots of room for improvement. So anyway, getting back to it, Germany does have some people that they consider too violent or too dangerous to be out and about, but they still have keys to their cells. They've got one prisoner to one cell, and inmates have computers. Inmates have phones. Inmates have basic creature comforts. They're living like human beings, not like animals. And here's the piece. If you treat somebody like a human being, odds are they'll behave like a human being. Much, much better.
Mm-hmm. How do you explain, like, some of the things we're seeing in San Francisco with mobs of people going into a store and
looting?
Basically looting it. And it seems to be happening in a lot of the big cities now.
That's a mob mentality. Somebody is the leader of that. It doesn't just happen. There's a couple of people who are going to seriously benefit from having the mob, and they convince a few others. And once you have a critical mass, it becomes a whole lot easier to get a group.
So they're the alphas of the group.
They're actually the real leaders. This gets into an interesting piece. Is not the person with the idea, but the person who supports the person with the idea.
Whoa, back up. What?
It's what we call first follower. The first follower is usually the most powerful leader in the group, because what they do is they take the leader from being a crazy nut to being a visionary. Lots of people have great ideas, but unless you have somebody who has the wherewithal to support you, and you need to support them if you're the leader. So there has to be a mutual working with the two people, and they will bring on the third and fourth. And once you've got that, then you've got the beginning of a movement, because they will bring their friends, and their friends will bring their friends. So it's called first follower. It's a major principle in leadership. And people think that, if you're a good leader, that XYZ is going to happen. And the answer is no. It's not just about being a good leader. It's about having a good follower. You're much, much more effective with a good follower. Sometimes it's your partner. Sometimes it's not. Certainly a good partner is huge at helping to pick up the pieces, smooth the wake, do all of that. And if you don't have a good first follower, then ideas are going to fall flat. You're going to be that lone nut dancing on you can find it. If you look for dancing guy first follower on Google, you'll find an explanation of what I'm talking about, how first followers create movements. They're what stops somebody from being just a crazy idea person to being a leader. You've got to have a follower. You can't be a leader without a follower.
Sounds like politics.
Yeah. Well, if you look at politics, there's always a handler working with the candidate.
That's true. Yeah.
And that handler is the first follower, the person who makes what the candidate says make sense. That's the job of the first follower.
Interesting.
If you're rich, you can buy one, but buying a good one's another story. But yeah, that's why candidates have people who manage them, and they do a much better job when they have a good relationship with that person, and they trust them enough. Right? So the leader has to have enough trust in their first follower, and has to embrace them as an equal. Not publicly, perhaps, but so that that person feels and recognizes that they are a part of the team. Very, very critical. And that's a trust relationship. Again, people can do amazing things when we're not solo. We are not designed or intended to be solo. We're just not. That our evolution, in fact, we have something in our brains called mirror neurons, whose job it is to look around and mirror what we're seeing. That's why the mobs are doing this, because those mirror neurons train in on the group that's leading it. It's not unlike the group that companies like McDonald's and others did with creating that feeling of there's a tidal wave of frivolous lawsuits. No, there's not. Lawyers aren't going to waste their time on frivolous lawsuits. But there's a perception of that, and the companies that led those protests and all of that stuff, those were funded, folks. And it was to turn the tide, the public opinion
You mean like
tide.
the coffee lawsuits?
Yeah, the coffee lawsuit, the hot coffee. If you don't know the real story behind the hot coffee, that one is horrendous. You really need to Google and look at it. It's been the line of a lot of jokes, but that woman received third-degree burns. She was not driving. She and her grandson had pulled in, gotten a breakfast and a coffee, and the car that he was driving didn't have flat surfaces. So she put the coffee between her legs to hold it, and in trying to open it to get a drink from it, it spilled at the top. And she was wearing sweatpants, and the 190-degree coffee went down into her sweatsuit. McDonald's at the time served coffee at 190 degrees.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
A lot of people didn't know that. That's 22 degrees lower than boiling. We get into a bathtub, and most of us don't like a bathtub over 100 to 104. 110 is very hot, and higher than that, you can burn yourself. She had third-degree burns on her genitals and in her groin.
Ooh.
And she was hospitalized for a long time, not to mention traumatized. And when she originally came to McDonald's and asked them, she admitted that she had fumbled and spilled it, but her point was that coffee should not be that hot. Now, why do they serve coffee that hot? Because if you're running through the drive-thru and picking up a coffee and taking it to the office, and that's why I have a thermos. The worst thing you have is lukewarm coffee.
And they wanted to keep it hot.
They wanted to keep it hot enough so that when you got to the office, it was still at least warm and drinkable. Because if it's cold, you pitch it, and you stop buying the coffee. So that was the reason they did it. There had been over 700 complaints of people being burned by the coffee in the stores, in the restaurants, and on their way home. She wasn't the only one. And when she went to McDonald's and asked them to please help her with her medical expenses, she had thousands of dollars of medical expenses, they offered her $800. And that took almost a year to get to that place.
Yeah.
And at that point, they went in, and the jury actually came up with the idea that in order to get McDonald's to shift their coffee a little bit cooler so that it wasn't quite so lethal, that they would fine McDonald's 2 days of coffee sales.
Wow.
2 days. It's a punitive. So punitive penalties are above and beyond the damages, and that's where they came up with that huge amount of a settlement. And the judge actually reduced it, and then McDonald's and the woman came to an agreement, and it was much, much less. The big thing she wanted, and it took years and years to get it, was just to get out from under those medical bills. Yeah. Never mind that she was never whole again because of the burns.
The burns, yeah.
Yeah, the burns are so disfiguring that you can't even begin to imagine. And burn pain, there is no anesthetic for burn pain that works. People are just horribly in pain. So you want to talk about medical professions that work hard and have to process the secondary and tertiary trauma. It's people who work on burn patients.
Burn units. Oh,
burn units
bet.
You folks have the biggest hearts. And to be able to do that and to vent it without distressing the patient as they're sitting there screaming because it hurts, and the only way to help them heal is to hurt them more. Yeah. It's very hard. So, yeah, there's lots of times that there's all kinds of stuff in the world. But that's the coffee suit. So it wasn't at all frivolous.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't at all unreasonable. Coffee should not be so hot that it's going to give you third-degree burns. It just shouldn't.
I remember Carol covered a story when Michael Jackson got burned, and he was so thankful at the hospital in Culver City that he donated a whole new burn unit to that hospital. It was wonderful. You just think, wow.
There are some beautiful stories in life where people do amazing things. Those who have the resources to do that sort of thing, when they become generous, it's huge. And there's certainly a need. We don't begin. Can you imagine society where we took the money that we spend on warehousing people who are not dangerous and put it toward medical research and medical treatment? We can still employ people. They don't have to be guards. They can be orderlies. Okay, I'm trying to come across it at a... there are other jobs that they can be trained to do.
Sure.
And they could help society instead of warehousing people.
Well, there used to be a deal in California, I have no idea now, where the inmates would work on license plates and they would do all sorts of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And we've got governors who want to put back chain gangs.
Oh, God. Oh, brother.
Talk about slave labor.
Oh, my.
Right.
Yeah.
Because really, even the license plate manufacturer, they don't get paid.
No, that's true. That's true.
That's slave labor at the state level. Okay, folks, let's call it what it is.
Yeah, that's so true.
So we look at the German prisons, and aside from having their own room to which they have the key, I'm going to guess that the warden also has a key, but the prisoners have their own keys to their own cells. They go in at night at curfew. They have to be in their rooms, and it's one person per cell. And Ted Rosen is really good on his video. He says, this is about the size of my dorm room when I was in college, but there's a big difference between two college kids sharing a room and a rapist and a murderer sharing a room. We would have so much less prison violence if prisoners could unwind in their own rooms at night.
Mm-hmm.
And be in their rooms for curfew.
It's like all of us.
But the other thing that German prisoners do, they cook. They cook their own meals.
I didn't remember that. Huh,
And
okay.
yeah. And so Rosen and others said, well, don't they have knives and things like that? And the guard said, of course, you need those to cook. Here's another huge, huge difference. Being a prison official in Germany is a high-power, sought-after job. Less than 10% of those who apply are accepted. And when they're accepted, they have to go through a 2-year training program.
Oh.
Mostly, are you ready for this, in mental health therapy.
There you go.
There's a small unit on how to control but de-escalation is a big piece of what they're doing, trying to help the prisoners, the inmates, gain the skills to manage their own challenges so that they don't act out, so that they don't escalate, so that they don't become violent. And so they have all of these different therapy sessions that they go through and learn some basic life skills. They have to learn a job, so they've got painting, they've got knitting classes for dexterity, they've got woodworking and some other amazing things that would be unheard of in American prisons. And they've got tables which they could break a leg off of, but there aren't prison gang-ups as much. Are there? I'm not saying that it's perfect in a German prison. Don't get me wrong. There are drugs, there are gangs, there are other issues that are being hopefully addressed, and those are real problems. But their management of the inmates' lives is so different from what we do in America. There was they talked to an inmate and during the last 6 months that you're in prison, you actually are encouraged to leave the prison during the day to go find a job and to go find a place to live.
Okay. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense, because that way, when the door is open and your sentence is over, you have a job to go to, you have a place where you're going to live. You're not out on the street with no skills. We sabotage our inmates, many of whom have been incarcerated since they were young. So they don't have life skills. They don't have vocations. They don't have anything with which to spend their time and energy other than returning to a criminal element.
Yeah, where I would imagine recidivism rates are really high.
They're much, much higher in the U.S. than they are in Germany. Just don't get them. And it's because of the way that the inmates are treated. The head of the prison that 60 Minutes talks to, he's a psychologist. He's a licensed psychologist. Imagine the difference if we did that if we incorporated psychology and mental health into our prison systems. How different it would be. Yeah, it just would be very, very different. Especially since the incidence of mental illness is so high among inmates.
It seems to be getting worse.
Well, because we're breeding it inside those facilities. We're actually causing some of it. And we're not doing the things to help students. One of the we've talked about different pieces of students that I work with. One of the things that I'm seeing more and more of is students who are not ready to be college students. They just are not getting the skills that they need to be self-motivated, self-disciplined leaders.
I remember my old college at Loyola, they had prison law courses, and it was funny, during one of the Loyola graduations, they actually had a couple prisoners that had passed the bar and become lawyers, and went to, you think you hear about those, but they're few and far between.
They're few and far between.
Yeah.
It's so hard. They have to so fight the system. They really, really do. They have to work so hard to beat it. It's unfair.
And the school, as I remember, because the law school was in downtown L.A., that they had to make sure that these two prisoners were, guarded, I guess, if you will, but nobody was really guarding them in the law school. They were just students.
And again, if you look at the difference between the way we treat inmates and the way Germany does, just phenomenal. And it's not just Germany; it's much of Europe. That the German system is a model system, of course.
I think that's amazing.
It is, and some of that can be transferred in, and some of it can't, because of the numbers and the way that we're set up, and we've just got to really need to take a hard look at and do a systemic change. And do it because that's what's good for America. We have far too many people who could be meaningful, decent, contributing members of society. The other piece that's kind of interesting that they talk about in the 60 Minutes is that they're not even allowed to find out all the details of the crimes because it's covered by privacy laws in Germany.
Okay.
So, and part of that is because the German Constitution, written in the shadow of the Third Reich, right? So the Constitution they wrote after that horrific episode in Germany's history, the first part of the German Constitution is that human autonomy is inviolable. It must be respected, and that's why the inmates have solitary rooms. That's why they have this. That's why they have that. Because that's a right guaranteed by the German Constitution. We don't have that.
Wow.
Very, very different system.
Yeah.
The German Constitution was written to help ensure that the Third Reich wouldn't happen again. And so they passed into law those things to help people recognize that human beings are human beings and are entitled to being treated like a human being. What a radical difference between that and the kind of stuff that we do. We could do so much better, folks. We want to be the beacon, the light to the world. Well, we've got the opportunity. We simply have to grab it and work with it and make it happen. Because I think we do have that potential. I'm an American by choice. I tell that to people all the time. I've lived in other parts of the world, and I choose to come back here and live. And it's because I'm hoping to help make America better. Because I know we have the potential. And I guess that's as good a place as any to say, if you'd like to join us on a Friday night, services are at 7:30 p.m. and we're at 295 Northwest Prima Vista Boulevard at the corning of Irving. Turn north on Irving, turn left into St. Andrews, and come in and join us at the Community Center on the St. Andrews campus.
And that's what time?
Friday at 7:30 p.m.
All right. Be there. Have a good week.
You too. Take care. Everyone have a blessed week.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.